G'day, wonderful listeners. This is episode 42 of Trev's Talk, and I'm your host, Trev. Last week, I left off talking about being qualified to advocate for people suffering mental issue stigma and alarmist attitudes. Before being awarded with the Order of Australia Medal, I was too scared to speak out on mental issues due to me having mental issues myself, even though my issues were a long time ago. We all see from time to time a person on TV running amok and blaming schizophrenia. The people doing those often deadly events are invariably not on their prescribed medication. So it should be obvious that those awful TV occasions of schizophrenics going wild and hurting people happen when they have abandoned their medication. However, the number of those awful cases that make it onto TV is not very high, but due to the violence concerned, they make a huge impact with the public. Only a few cases, but huge negative impact. I asked Boris, my AI assistant, if there are many mental health sufferers in Australia, and he said there are approximately one sufferer per every 100 people. That means about 1% of the population is affected by mental health, and a serious proportion of them would be schizophrenia sufferers. So what I'm trying to get you to see is that there is a very large number of schizophrenics in Australia, but only a very tiny amount of those who go wild due to being off their medication. However, because the ones who go wild are shoved in your face on TV, the public's perception of schizophrenics is they are all living on the edge of being very violent. The general public thinking is that schizophrenics are to be kept well away from. They are volatile and untrustworthy. I personally have been diagnosed as a mild schizophrenic. Mild because I can be controlled by medication. I have been on good medication since just before Christmas in 2001 and have been totally compliant to that medication and have lived a life of high achieving community service from before that date, but most especially since then. My community service led me to discover the local Aboriginal school while I was volunteering as a regional president for Vinnies at the beginning of 2010. I had been a Vinnies volunteer since 1990 and had lots of experience dealing with struggling Aboriginal families. When I discovered the school, I could see immediately that helping the school educate Aboriginal kids was the way to really help, give the kids a chance at a better future. So I set to work and founded a charity to concentrate on improving education, health and well-being of underprivileged students, especially Aboriginal. In the 20 years leading up to my founding the charity, I was volunteering with Vinnies in capacities where my past mental health issues were not a problem. I just never spoke about that part of my life. When I started the charity, though, I had to front up to important business people and government agencies to get donations and comply with all sorts of regulations. I was uncomfortably aware that I did not want any of those people to discover I had schizophrenia in my past. I was acutely aware of the stigma attached to that mental illness. So early in my second year of directing the charity, I thought I should ask my doctor of about 5 years' history to give me a certificate to show I was well controlled by medication, compliant to it, and fully stable mentally. I thought that if I had such a certificate and some person or agency questioned my mental health, I could produce the certificate and all would be okay. Having the certificate quietened my fear somewhat, but not entirely. Just imagine if I asked you for a donation for my charity and you knew I was a schizophrenic, would you donate? Back in those early days, I thought any person affected by schizophrenia stigma would shy away from me. I was too scared to come out into the public. I thought the cost to me would be far too great. So I stayed silent and just coasted along until the heavens opened. In January 2021, I was awarded the Order of Australia Medal. Getting that medal meant I had real proof that I was operating to a high standard and was not affected by being a mild schizophrenic. Having that medal would possibly open some doors and securing donations might become easier. If anyone questioned my mental health, I could just remind them that I had one of the highest medals you can get in the nation. I must be okay. So hopefully you can now see I am a clear example of how schizophrenia can be controlled by medication and make the person with it a fully functional citizen in the general community. Schizophrenia or bipolar issues can be controlled in some cases, just like hypertension or other health issues can be controlled. Now, I need to be brave and advocate for those people suffering a mental health issue that is medically controlled. The same conditions that regulate whether a person suffering hypertension should be allowed clearance to fly should be the same conditions that regulate whether a person suffering mental health issues can be cleared to fly. Flying planes in both those health cases should be regulated on a case-by-case basis. The general public stigma attached to mental health issues should have no bearing on a person's medical clearance to fly planes. Singling out and banning one group of medically controlled persons is not democratic and is discriminatory. Remember a short while ago, I said Boris, my AI assistant, told me that 1 in 100 is suffering a mental health issue. So even in small country towns, there is a small group of people suffering schizophrenia or bipolar who are living normal lives because they are medically controlled. This is why I am working at obtaining a flying license. I want to fly around the country regions, doing presentations on my book, speaking on my Medjugorje experiences, and advocating against mental health stigma. I know from my own experience that many country GPs are not knowledgeable when it comes to schizophrenia or bipolar issues. It is very important that mental health sufferers are very carefully managed if reducing their medication or trying to go off it altogether. It could be best in lots of cases if a sufferer is on a low dose with no side effects to leave it at that and not discontinue altogether. Country health professionals could learn from my lived experience. Now, I left off preparing this podcast late yesterday and have been enjoying a night's sleep until just a short while ago. At about 2:30 a.m, I had an inspiration thought slide into my mind. I have spoken to you previously about inspiration thoughts in episode 37. This thought just now came sliding into my mind when I was neither awake nor asleep. I was sort of between the two. So I'm not sure whether it was part of a dream or just me sleepily thinking. The thought was that same-sex couples should be able to take communion. They are currently being discriminated against by the church. Before going on about this slide-in thought, maybe you should go back and listen to episode 24 about the 3 kinds of love needed for a solid marriage or same-sex union, and maybe check out episodes 34 and 37 to brush up on civil unions not being acknowledged by the church. I got that slide-in thought for same-sex couples being discriminated against and denied communion just minutes ago, and to really emphasise it to me as a podcast topic, I read on the back of the church bulletin at Mass last evening that our new Pope, Leo, is asking the people to pray for establishment throughout the church of a mental health ministry for overcoming stigma and discrimination of persons with mental health. Wow, that seems like a hint to me to fight on against mental health stigma and discrimination, like I'm doing with my medical clearance to fly planes. Well, wonderful listeners, that's it for this week. Please consider subscribing and commenting on whichever platform you are using, Spotify or YouTube. This is Trev, tuning out for this week.